Welcome in, and thanks so much for joining me. So, in my ongoing series on how to get unstuck, I'm going to talk about discipline today. In our past episodes, I talked about ways of getting unstuck when you feel stagnation in your meditation practice through the means of devotional content, devotional practices. In the next video, I talked about aspiration that really helps me as well to get unstuck when I feel stagnant or inertia in my practice. And today, as I said, I'd like to discuss discipline, which is a big topic. It falls under Shila, which is more or less a Pali and Sanskrit word pronounced slightly differently in each language, that often gets translated as ethics, and sometimes egregiously, in my opinion, as morality. But actually, discipline is a word in English that fits it a little bit more. And of course, when we're trying to get unstuck, maybe there's some stagnation in showing up to our practice cushion. Maybe we've missed a few days or a few weeks or a few months. And of course, we need to apply some kind of discipline or routine or energy towards our practice. And the reason I chose this is because I think it's a really rich topic to talk about in relation to ethics as well. And it's often misunderstood because when we use the word discipline, at least for me, I used to interpret it as sort of like willpower or sort of sheer will. The sheer will to show up to something, to do something. And it was sort of like, for me, I don't know if it was like pushy, but it wasn't sustainable over long periods, meaning it's a great technique to just sort of, through willpower, just do it. Especially if we're struggling to show up to our meditation cushion on a regular basis, just do it. And then, in a few weeks, you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with showing up regularly, and perhaps you're getting something out of your practice which inspires you. But it's not a good long-term strategy because we'll burn out. Basically, we'll just sort of we won't have the juice to sustain it. Where what discipline applies, or more Shila, the term Shila as one of the pillars of the path. What it applies is actually an interest, an investigation, a type of curiosity, a longing, a thirst to know the truth. To know, what actually genuinely causes me peace in my life and what doesn't. A lot of the Buddhist path is working with that, and then once we have some confidence, some clarity on that, we can move forward in the practice with less lethargy, with less inertia, because we feel uplifted. We feel like we're doing the right thing. We feel like we're doing something useful. We're doing something meaningful towards our goals of liberation, enlightenment, awakening, and just sort of more peace and freedom, right? So for me, Shila implies this. It implies a way of working with our life through mindfulness and through awareness, where we're becoming more attuned to what causes harm and what causes peace or happiness. So ethics, you could say like there's ethics involved in that. Of course, like in Buddhism, we have prescriptions of certain ethical conduct, like avoiding the 10 non-virtues, things like that, adopting the 10 virtues. And you can kind of look at those on surface value and say, yeah, those are sets of ethics. But actually, what they're doing is they're teaching us, they're helping us to cultivate more connection, more presence, more awareness of how we use our body, speech, and mind, more awareness of what is causing harm to ourselves and others, and what may cause benefit or help. And so this is, I think, at the essence of Shila, whether we're talking about a prescriptive conduct, like, don't steal, something like that, versus a way of life where we're working to know the mind, we're working to know, again, how to remove the causes of harm and to increase the causes of genuine peace. So when it comes to getting unstuck in our practice, not suggesting you're stuck or that you're, off your regular practice, but, even if I am practicing regularly, I can sometimes get into a rut, and it just sort of feels like going through the motions each day. And as I've rethought Shila and discipline in relation to my formal practice and informal practice as well, it's changed the way I work with it, because we can use our practices, let's say the techniques or protocols we use to practice, like, the most basic ones, sit and watch your breath, right? We can use these techniques or protocols as either a rote technique that we're doing, or we use it as a way in, right? And what I mean by a way in is when we study and get to know the Dharma, what we see is it's a path to, of course, getting to know, what causes harm, removing that, what causes genuine peace, and increasing that. But it's also a path to getting to know the mind and the causes of all of that, as well as how we actually connect with our genuine nature. So in the Mahayana tradition, they teach more or less. There's a lot of teachings on our genuine nature being awake, and it's merely a process of removing the obscurations that are in the way of being that. And so when we apply discipline to that, it's this, I don't know, there's a sense of joy in that for me, because I want that, like it's something that's meaningful to me. It's something that I feel has value for putting my time into. And so discipline is not sheer will or willpower. It's the energy, it's not quite excitement, the joy, this upliftedness to engage in it because I want to uncover something. It's like, if the previous owner of your house and property buried treasure somewhere, and you find out, you're going to be really excited to do a bunch of work. You're going to be really joyous to do a bunch of work to dig up the ground and find the treasure. It's very similar here. Our awakened nature is like a treasure that's more or less buried in our mind that we uncover through studying, reflecting, and meditating on the Dharma. And so we get out of this mindset of being technique-driven and doing-driven and into this mindset of investigative, curious. And by investigation, I don't mean like we have to analyze things all the time. It just means we're looking, we're aware, we're growing the qualities in our meditation to give us more skill and the sharpening of the tool of awareness to be able to do that. And so we find joy in that. And of course, this plays into one of the 6 paramitas, which we often translate as joyous perseverance. That it's the 4th paramita. And there's a lot of components of joyous perseverance, but the essence of it, I think, is very much related to how we make discipline sustainable, right? Because discipline or Shila can't be sustainable if there's no joy. So there's many ways to foster joy in our practice. And, you can experiment with different ones. The one I really want to focus on, I already spoke about it a little bit, is I would say, like, it takes time, and it's a little more hard won in the sense that we actually have to sit down and practice and experience some of the fruit of practice. And this could be as simple as, our busy sort of chaotic minds settling, for just a few moments in meditation. That can be quite life-changing for people in the beginning. For me, I think one of the earlier experiences I had when I first started meditating was just an experience of, I can observe and bear witness to my thoughts and emotions. I don't have to immediately become them. Like, they're not necessarily me. And that was incredibly liberating. I mean, it didn't last very long, but even just seeing that was the hook. It brought me joy to continue to explore and practice, right? And then our meditation practice, whatever techniques we're using, it becomes a path of exploration. I think that's a better word than investigation. It becomes a path of exploration, right? So discipline here is fostering that, is encouraging that exploration. And, just to be realistic, I would say, I don't know for you, but for me, 80% of the time, it's just showing up, and there is willpower involved. There is sort of, I just sort of have this adage of, just show up and do it, kind of attitude. So most of it is that, and it is slow. When we're cultivating the qualities of Dharma internally, it does take time for most of us, and slow is gradual, and that's okay. And so we just have to remind ourselves sometimes when we're going through those periods of those moments where we had some, mini transformation. And we're not trying to dwell on that. We're not trying to recreate that. We're just using it as a way to connect into joy when we are having trouble connecting into it. And then that serves in the exploration. At a certain point, if we're training in mindful awareness becomes a tool to observe more objectively our emotional experience, our sensations, all of our sensory experiences as well as mind. And we start to kind of attune to this way of being, I call, being an explorer of mind, right? And the reason I call it a way of being is it's sort of like, or maybe a way of life is a better way to put it. When that becomes a way of life, discipline is a little easier, meaning like showing up to regular practice, increasing it. Like, let's say we normally meditate for 30 minutes and then we increase it to an hour or 2 hours. It doesn't feel as burdensome. This also relates to retreat. I remember recently hearing one teacher, Kandrola, and she was talking about retreat because someone asked her sort of about going to retreat, and she said, well, you could go to retreat, but you might not get that much out of it because how are you going to be able to sustain 8-10 hours or more of formal sitting practice just out of nowhere? So she was quite practical. She was advising, start small, build up your daily practice, then do some, do a day, do a weekend, do a week, and then you can go into longer retreats. And I really liked her answer because I've experienced that directly in long retreats of just sort of at a certain point, I'm just pushing, I'm just running on fumes because I'm trying to keep up with a meditation schedule that's actually beyond my limits. So I think there's value to increasing our, how much we meditate. There's value in growing that slowly because then we can grow it through this kind of discipline I'm talking about, which is more related to exploration and joy, where we see the possibility to be free or awake, and we want to pursue that, right? We start to see it in our meditation. We start to smell or taste it a little bit, and then we want to pursue that. And of course, in the beginning, we study the Dharma, and it's just sort of nice ideas. And that's okay too. We have to start somewhere. It's just nice ideas, so maybe connected to some beliefs about those ideas. And then we pursue a little bit more based on faith. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we don't actually taste it at a certain point, it just remains an idea. It just remains a nice idea. So exploring discipline in this kind of way, I think, is helpful. So I think I'll leave it there. But of course, as always, I'd like to hear from you and, how you work with discipline, either in the ways I'm describing it or other ways. And especially in this area when there's inertia, when we're struggling in our practice, right? It doesn't mean we're missing sessions. It just means maybe we're struggling a little bit. So yeah, I appreciate that. You can comment here if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to my podcast in an audio version, you can always reach me at scotttusa.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Wishing you all the best in your practice.